The boos hit the air before anyone fully understood what was happening. Sharp, sudden, loud enough to slice through the red carpet chatter like a knife gliding across glass. It wasn't a slow ripple of disapproval or a confused murmur that needed time to build. It was instant, like a spark to dry tinder. One moment the cameras were idle, waiting for the next celebrity arrival at the American Cinematheque Awards 2025. And the next, the entire front row shifted forward as if gravity itself pulled them, every phone rising, every whisper swelling toward the same electrifying realization. Meghan Markle had arrived, and the audience was not having it. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. What would you do if you stepped onto a red carpet expecting applause, flashbulbs, and admiration, only to be met with a wall of rejection so loud it shook security? What would it feel like to expect royal treatment in a city built on reputation, only to discover yours had quietly slipped out from under you? That sound, those boos, they weren't just noise. They were a message, a verdict, a crack in the facade of U.S. support Meghan once believed she had secured. And for a split second, the entire event shifted. Photographers lowered their cameras. Publicists froze mid-sentence. Even the award presenters standing at the entrance exchanged glances that said everything they didn't dare say aloud. Did that really just happen? Yes, it did. And it was only the beginning. Because that night, Meghan wasn't simply attending an award show. She wasn't simply arriving as a guest or even as a celebrity. She came expecting something more, something bigger, something the organizers didn't plan for and weren't willing to give. A royal-style entrance. A reset of the entire red carpet flow. A demand so bold that even veteran Hollywood coordinators had to ask each other whether they had heard her correctly. But before we get there, before the confrontation, before the chaos, before the moment that turned a glamorous evening into the most talked-about celebrity incident of 2025, let's rewind just a few minutes. Because these kinds of moments never start the instant they explode. They build, quietly, subtly, in the corners of conversations, in backstage decisions, in expectations formed long before anyone steps out of a vehicle. And on this particular night, there was tension in the air long before Meghan's black SUV rolled to a stop. To understand that tension, you have to understand Hollywood's relationship with Meghan. Once, she was welcomed as a symbol of modern royalty, the American actress who broke into the British monarchy, a living fairy tale. But Hollywood is a place where reputations can change faster than a lighting cue. One week you're praised. The next, you're avoided. Whispers start. Calls stop. Emails go unanswered. And before you realize it, a reputation you thought was untouchable suddenly depends on the goodwill of executives who quietly decided they're tired of the drama. And Meghan brought drama with her that night. Not accidentally, not subtly, but directly and loudly. Even before her car arrived, staff members were already on edge. They had received instructions from Meghan's team. When she arrives, the carpet must be cleared. Not paused, not held for a moment. Cleared, meaning every other guest, every photographer, every journalist must step back so Meghan could enter like royalty. A private, uninterrupted, cinematic moment. But the American Cinematheque Awards aren't a royal event. They're not even a celebrity with a superior complex event. It's Hollywood. And Hollywood, at its core, believes no one, absolutely no one, is bigger than the industry itself. So when Meghan's request hit the organizing team, the energy shifted. They weren't angry. Not yet. But they were annoyed. Some rolled their eyes. Others sighed. A few laughed under their breath. Because this wasn't the first time they had seen high expectations. But it was the first time someone asked them to stop an entire award show's red carpet flow so they could reset the cameras. Still, Hollywood handles difficult personalities every day. They were prepared to navigate it. They had a script, a plan, a strategy, but nothing prepared them for what the crowd outside would do. The SUV door opened. Meghan stepped out with a confident smile meant for cameras she assumed would capture her in flattering angles. Her posture was straight, her chin lifted just a touch too high. Her hand adjusted the sleeve of her gown in a motion clearly practiced. She expected the applause, or at least polite murmuring, the kind A-listers receive even on regular nights. But instead, booing. Real, raw, immediate. a sound that bounced off metal barricades and echoed into the microphones of every entertainment outlet streaming live. And Meghan's face, just for a second, cracked. A tiny shift the cameras nearly missed. The flicker of disbelief. A micro moment where confidence faltered and confusion crept in. Because in Meghan's world, crowds were supposed to cheer. They were supposed to adore her. She had built her image around the idea that she was admired, misunderstood by the media, maybe, but beloved by the public. The cheers at earlier speaking events had reinforced that belief. Her team had echoed it. Her supporters had repeated it. But not tonight. Tonight the audience sent a different message. What makes this moment so important, so defining, isn't simply that Meghan was booed. Celebrities get booed. Politicians get booed. Even beloved actors have faced backlash. No, what makes this moment different is what it revealed. About Meghan. About Hollywood. About the shifting power dynamic between fame, narrative, and public patience. Because here's the truth no one expected. The booing wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't random. It wasn't the result of just one unpopular moment. It was brewing, building, waiting. And the moment Meghan demanded something the audience perceived as entitlement, the crowd reacted. Instantly. Loudly. Publicly. If you think that's dramatic, wait. Because the real twist of this night wasn't the boos. It was what Meghan did next. But before we go there, there's something you should know. Something almost no one at home watching the live stream realized. There was someone standing backstage. Someone with a direct line to the organizers. Someone who witnessed the entire scene long before Meghan ever stepped out of the car. Someone who would later reveal that what you saw, the arrival, the boos, the tension, was only half the story. The other half, it happened behind the scenes, hidden from the cameras, unseen by the audience, unheard by the millions who later watched the clip online and said, "Wow, Meghan was really caught off guard." She wasn't. Not entirely. Because according to that backstage witness, Meghan had already been warned. Her team knew the mood of the night. They knew the atmosphere. They knew the organizers weren't granting the red carpet reset she expected. And yet, she insisted on arriving exactly as planned. Which raises a question I want you to consider. Was this moment avoidable? Was the booing a surprise? Or the inevitable result of a long, slow build-up of Hollywood frustration? Because Hollywood may smile outwardly, but behind those smiles are sharp opinions. And on this night, those opinions were bubbling. Every celebrity who walked the carpet before Meghan had heard the whispers. Every journalist standing along the barricade had seen the online shift. Every staff member knew the tension between Meghan's expectations and the organizers' reality. So when she finally stepped out, it wasn't just an arrival. It was a collision. A collision between what Meghan wanted and what Hollywood was prepared to tolerate. A collision between image and perception. A collision between entitlement and exhaustion. And that collision sparked the loudest reaction of the night. But what came next, what happened only moments after those boos, would turn this from a simple PR disaster into a full-blown Hollywood scandal. Because Meghan didn't just keep walking. She didn't simply ignore the noise. She didn't laugh it off or roll her eyes. No, she confronted it. Directly, boldly, unexpectedly. And that confrontation set off a chain of events that left staff scrambling, security confused, and the audience stunned. But before we get to that moment, something else happened. Something subtle. Something backstage. Something that changed the course of the evening before anyone realized what it meant. And no one saw it coming. She lingered for a heartbeat too long. That's what the backstage witness later said. Most celebrities move quickly when faced with a hostile crowd. A polite wave, a strategic smile, a graceful glide to the next camera. But Meghan didn't move. Not right away. It was as if she was trying to process the sound, decode it, reshape it in her mind into something less painful than what it truly was. Because boos carry weight. And these weren't muted, hesitant, accidental murmurs. These were targeted, coordinated by emotion, if not by plan. And they didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder as more people realized what was happening. Imagine being in her shoes for a moment. Imagine stepping into a spotlight you believed you controlled, only to discover the spotlight now controls you. Would you pretend not to hear it? Would you stay composed? Or would your instincts flare like sparks in the dark? Meghan's instincts certainly flared. Her posture shifted. The confident smile hardened. Her shoulders tightened. Her eyes scanned the crowd. Not with charm, not with appreciation, but with something closer to disbelief mixed with irritation. And that's when the cameras began to click again. Not because the moment was glamorous, but because it was rare, unexpected, controversial. A moment journalists know always goes viral. But the audience didn't care about the cameras. They weren't booing for attention. They were booing because they felt something. Some said it was frustration. Some said it was exhaustion. Others said it was just the natural consequence of someone demanding privilege in a place where privilege must be earned, not expected. And if Meghan thought the crowd would quiet down as she moved forward, she was wrong. The boos followed her, step by step, echoing between the barricades, riding the air like a cold wind. And for the organizers, who had already rejected her request for a special entrance, this was the moment everything started slipping out of their control. But the real shift, the moment that set the tone for the rest of the night, didn't happen on the carpet. It happened 10 feet away, behind the velvet ropes, where a single production coordinator, headset on, clipboard in hand, whispered into her microphone, "She's not happy." That sentence changed the atmosphere backstage instantly. Because when a celebrity isn't happy, staff prepare for complications. But when Meghan isn't happy, especially after a public embarrassment, the stakes rise higher. The coordinators exchanged looks. Security stepped closer. The PR team huddled. The event director took a slow breath, already bracing for the confrontation they feared was coming. And they were right to prepare, because Meghan was not about to let this slide. But before she could even reach the press line, the first sign of trouble emerged. One photographer refused to move. Meghan wanted the frame cleared to reset her entrance. But one photographer, a veteran of the industry, stood exactly where he was assigned. That's when the second crack appeared. You see, the American Cinematheque Awards operate on strict schedules. There are no resets, no redos, no private royal-style entrances unless planned months in advance. Everyone knows this. And still, Meghan tried to negotiate on the spot. But negotiation implies compromise. And compromise wasn't what she wanted. She wanted control. And without skipping a beat, she turned to her team and said something the backstage witness described as unbelievably bold, especially considering what had just happened at the entrance. She told her team to ask the organizers again. Not politely, not conversationally, but firmly, authoritatively, with expectation. And that's when the event director stepped in. This is important because it's the first time in the night that someone pushed back directly. The director didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply said, "We cannot and will not redo the red carpet procession for any guest. Not tonight." Simple, clear, final. But Meghan didn't take it as final. Her expression shifted again, the way a performer adjusts when a scene doesn't go the way they rehearsed. And in that moment, the tension shifted from public embarrassment to private irritation. A kind of irritation that doesn't stay contained for long. The staff felt it. The publicists felt it. Even the celebrities waiting their turn to be interviewed felt it, because the energy around Meghan had shifted into something sharp. Still, she wasn't alone. Her team, loyal, trained, always ready to defend, stepped forward, crafting explanations, excuses, alternatives. Anything to soften the denial. Anything to salvage the image. Anything to keep the night from spiraling. But the night was already spiraling. And the real twist? The crowd outside had no idea what was happening backstage. They only saw Meghan moving down the carpet, posing for a few photos, answering a few forced questions, all while the boos softened into scattered murmurs. But inside the event's inner workings, the temperature had risen. Staff members were whispering. Producers were adjusting schedules. Security was told to stay alert. And that's when the backstage witness noticed something else, something subtle, but impossible to ignore. Meghan kept glancing toward the entrance, almost as if checking whether anyone influential had seen what happened, almost as if searching for validation or backup, almost as if waiting for someone to step forward and reassure her. But no one did. Hollywood isn't the place for that kind of reassurance. People support you when you're up, but they keep quiet when you're down. It's unspoken, uncomfortable, real. And Meghan felt that quiet. That silence might have been worse than the boos. Because silence leaves room for doubt. And doubt leaves room for anger. What happened next was the moment that turned irritation into confrontation. As Meghan reached the midpoint of the carpet, she stopped walking entirely. Not for a photo, not for an interview, but to speak privately, urgently, to someone on her team. And although the microphones didn't catch the words, the backstage witness did. She asked why the organizers didn't manage the crowd. She asked why her arrival wasn't properly coordinated. She asked why she wasn't given the treatment she requested. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. But in that setting, even a whisper can feel like a thunderclap. And her team didn't know what to say, because it wasn't their call. And they knew the organizers weren't bending. And they knew the night was only going to get harder from here. But here's the surprising part. Despite the tension, despite the irritation, despite the boos still echoing faintly outside, Meghan adjusted, recentered, reset her posture and walked toward the press line with a carefully reconstructed smile, the kind that says, "I'm fine, even when nothing is fine." But as she approached the first interviewer, something happened that even she didn't expect. A voice from the crowd shouted something. A sentence the microphones barely captured. A sentence that made Meghan freeze again. And that's where everything truly began to unravel. Because that voice didn't just trigger embarrassment. It triggered something much bigger. And what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. The shout didn't come from the press line. It didn't come from a reporter, a photographer, or anyone with a badge clipped to their jacket. It came from deep within the crowd, the general attendance section behind the barricades, where fans and onlookers always gather hoping to catch a glimpse of their favorite stars. Normally, these crowds cheer, wave signs, take selfies, or argue about who deserves which award. But not tonight. Tonight, someone yelled something that completely shifted the energy, not just for Meghan, not just for the organizers, but for everyone watching. And although not every camera picked it up, enough audio recorders did to confirm the moment. The voice shouted, "No special treatment here." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't vulgar. It wasn't even aggressive. It was simply blunt. Blunt enough to cut through the tension like a blade. Blunt enough to reopen whatever emotional bruise formed the moment Meghan stepped out of her SUV. Blunt enough to make Meghan pause mid-step, mid-breath, mid-smile. Have you ever had someone call out a truth you hoped no one would notice? Have you ever walked into a room believing you could control the narrative, only to have someone expose the very thing you try to hide? That was the moment Meghan froze. And freezing on a red carpet is never good. Every second of stillness is another second the cameras capture. Another second the crowd studies your expression. Another second for reaction videos later posted online with titles like "Meghan's Real Reaction to the Booing" or "Slowed Down." The exact moment Meghan cracks. But it wasn't just the cameras watching her now. It was the organizers, the PR teams, the security staff, and, most importantly, the celebrities behind her, waiting for their turn to walk the carpet and silently wondering just how chaotic the night was about to become. Because Meghan's pause wasn't just emotional. It was symbolic. It marked the moment her expectations collided with the crowd's reality. It was the moment the tension became undeniable. And it was the moment that set off everything that followed. The confrontation, the disagreements, the whispered conversations, the backstage scrambling. The production coordinator, the same one who whispered, "She's not happy," immediately lifted her headset again. "She stopped again," she said. "She's not moving." The event director responded instantly. "Do we have a blockage?" "No," the coordinator replied. "It's her." That was enough to send a ripple through the entire backstage team. Because when the schedule stalls, everything stalls. Red carpets are timed down to the minute. Each delay pushes interviews back, pushes presenters back, pushes the entire program back. And with the live broadcast approaching, the organizers were watching the clock like hawks. But Meghan wasn't thinking about the schedule. She wasn't thinking about the show. She wasn't thinking about the other celebrities waiting behind her. In that moment, she was thinking about the voice in the crowd. The voice that just challenged the one thing she expected to go smoothly, her entrance. Her team moved closer, instinctively forming a subtle barrier around her. They spoke quietly, quickly, professionally. One of them gestured toward the press line. Another pointed toward the first interviewer waiting to speak with her. A third whispered something meant to reassure her. But Meghan didn't look at them. She looked toward the crowd, not scanning for the person who shouted, not searching for a fight, but absorbing the reality of the moment. Because it wasn't about the single voice. It was about what that voice represented. A shift, a crack, a reflection of an image that had started to change long before tonight. For months, Hollywood insiders, fictionalized for this story, had been whispering about Meghan's relationship with the industry. Some felt she was trying to mold Hollywood into a royal court. Others felt she wanted the benefits of celebrity without the responsibility of maintaining professional expectations. And a few quietly observed that entitlement rarely plays well in an industry built on shared egos. If you've ever walked into a room expecting applause but instead received a challenge, you know exactly what this moment feels like. A sting, a jolt, a reminder that no matter how carefully you craft your public image, it only works if the public accepts it. And tonight, the public wasn't accepting it. Meghan's team finally managed to coax her forward again, guiding her toward the first interviewer. The press line is supposed to be the easiest part of any arrival. Smile, answer a few questions, pose briefly, move on. But tonight, every word, every camera angle, every glance felt heavier. The first interviewer greeted her with kindness, because the press always keeps it professional, but the awkward air lingered just behind the politeness. Meghan's responses were polite, poised, controlled, but her eyes flickered toward the barricades every few seconds, as if expecting another eruption. The boos had stopped by then, replaced by a quieter tension. The kind that sits in the air after a storm, humming with leftover electricity. But in that silence, Meghan felt something else creeping in. Pressure. Not external pressure. Internal. Because the real challenge wasn't the booing. It was maintaining composure on live cameras after being rattled. And even the best performers struggle with that. As she moved to the next interviewer, the backstage witness noticed something subtle again. Something only someone trained to watch body language would catch. Meghan was speeding up. Her steps were faster. Her posture more rigid. Her answers shorter. As if trying to outrun the moment that had just occurred. As if she believed she could walk quickly enough, talk fast enough, smile brightly enough to erase the boos from the audience's memory. This is where the contradiction became undeniable. She wanted to appear unbothered, but everything about her behavior signaled she was affected. Hollywood noticed, because Hollywood always notices. Meanwhile, inside the venue, the production team was scrambling to adjust the sequence. Meghan was supposed to walk slowly, allowing enough buffer time for the next wave of arrivals. But her accelerated pace forced assistants to reposition photographers, adjust lighting, and rush presenters to the stage. Backstage, the coordinator whispered into her mic again. "She's moving too fast. We can't keep the flow balanced." The director's frustration grew. "We need her to slow down. Can anyone signal her team?" But they couldn't. Not without stepping into the camera frame. Not without making the situation worse. And so the backstage tension increased, running parallel to the tension Meghan was feeling in front of the cameras. All of this created a strange, chaotic harmony, the public tension outside blending with the professional tension inside. And at the center of it all was Meghan, trying to hold together an image that had taken years to construct. She reached the final camera point, the place where celebrities typically take their longest set of photos. But instead of pausing confidently, she hesitated in a way that revealed everything you weren't supposed to see. A deep breath, a tightening of her jaw, a glance toward the exit. Her team softly gestured for her to pose. She lifted her chin, angled her shoulder, adjusted her expression. But before the photographers could settle into their rhythm, something else happened. A staff member rushed forward with a message that had to be delivered immediately, a message that would once again shift the entire energy of the night. And when Meghan heard what the staff member told her, her expression changed completely. Because whatever little control she believed she still had, she was about to lose it. And what happened next would push the evening from tense to explosive. And the cameras were still rolling. What came next would change everything. And not one person there saw it coming. The staff member who rushed toward Marina wasn't a reporter, a photographer, or a starstruck attendee. It was one of the event coordinators, a young woman with a headset pressed so tightly to her ear she looked like she was clinging to it for balance. She wove between cables and lighting rigs, elbows tucked, clipboard bouncing against her leg with every hurried step. When she reached Marina's entourage, she didn't speak loudly. She didn't have to. The urgency in her movements was enough to make Marina's publicist turn, shoulders tightening, eyes narrowing. Message from the director. The coordinator said, voice low. We need Marina inside. Now. That single word, need, carried more weight than Marina expected. Her eyes narrowed, her breath stilled. Something about the tone cut through the last thin thread of calm she was trying to hold on to after the booze, the shout from the crowd, and the tense walk down the carpet. Why? Marina asked, her voice measured but tight enough that her stylist flinched. There's a schedule adjustment, the coordinator said carefully. We need all guests in their seats. Those words never mean something simple. Not at an event like the Silverlight Honors Gala, where every second is orchestrated like a symphony. Schedule adjustment could mean anything, a technical delay, a presenter running late, a stage issue. But the look in the coordinator's eyes suggested something else. A complication directly tied to Marina. Her publicist stepped forward. We still have 2 press stops left. We know, the coordinator said quickly. The director knows, but he's asking for her now. Immediately, Marina's jaw tensed. To the viewers at home watching the live stream, this moment looked normal. They saw Marina pausing briefly beside the final photographer, her entourage subtly shifting around her. What they didn't see, what the backstage cameras didn't dare show, was the silent battle now unfolding between the Silverlight staff and Marina's team. Marina inhaled slowly, her eyes flicking between the entrance doors and the crowd still murmuring behind the barricades. She felt the tension thickening in the air again. Like fog, like static, like something waiting to crack. Her publicist turned toward her. It's your call, he whispered. But it wasn't really a choice. Not for someone who built her comeback on the illusion of control. Not for someone who crafted every appearance with precision. Not for someone who couldn't afford another misstep, especially after the disastrous entrance she hadn't planned for. Marina nodded once, sharp as a blade slicing through fabric. The coordinator exhaled with relief. Thank you. Right this way. The press line parted as the entourage followed her, but not smoothly. Not gracefully. Every step felt off balance. Uneven. As if they were being rushed through a corridor that wasn't meant to be rushed through. And then, halfway to the doors, the backstage witness, the stage manager who had observed everything from the shadows, noticed something others didn't. Marina wasn't just walking faster. She was bracing. Her shoulders were angled defensively. Her jaw was clenched. Her eyes had a cold, steady shine that didn't match the polite half-smile she kept raising like a shield. Something inside her had shifted. Not just embarrassment, not just irritation, but something deeper. Something that comes when someone who expects power suddenly feels powerless. Have you ever felt that? That snap inside your chest when you realize the room you thought you controlled isn't obeying you anymore? When you thought you'd walk in as the star, but the room has already turned on you. It's a feeling Marina Hale wasn't used to and didn't know how to hide. As they reached the doors of the venue, the coordinator pulled them aside for a moment. We're going to bring you straight to your seat. The program is about to shift, and we need to be ready. Marina blinked. Shift how? The coordinator hesitated. Just for a breath. But it was enough. The stage manager saw it too. That split second where truth fought with professional politeness. There's been a change in the presentation order, the coordinator finally said. Someone else is opening the night. That stopped Marina. Dead still. Even her entourage froze. Because originally, in the program Marina had seen, the opening spotlight wasn't going to a presenter. It was going to her. It was supposed to be her moment. Her speech. Her reintroduction to Hollywood. Her statement piece. The symbolic beginning of Marina Hale's second rise. A curated, planned, rehearsed moment meant to rebrand her image with a single, dazzling entrance. But now, that moment had been taken. Replaced. Without warning. Without explanation. Marina's chest tightened. Her hand nearly curled into a fist. She stepped closer to the coordinator, voice low and razor sharp. Who made that decision? The coordinator swallowed. The director. On whose request? The coordinator didn't answer. Because there was no safe answer. And that silence, that tiny slice of stillness between question and reply, was all Marina needed to understand that something had gone wrong far earlier in the night than she realized. Perhaps earlier that week. Perhaps earlier that month. Perhaps earlier in Hollywood's evolving opinion of her. Her publicist leaned in. Let's take our seats. We can discuss this after. No, Marina whispered. Not until I understand what's happening. And there it was. The tone. The tone her team feared. The tone the Silverlight staff dreaded. The tone that only emerged when Marina felt her image slipping from her grip. The stage manager watched the entire exchange unfold, scribbling mental notes about every movement, every whisper, every crack forming in the glamorous facade. She knew, instinctively, that this night was no longer just an awards show. It was a pressure cooker. A perfectly staged disaster. A moment too delicate, too heated, too unpredictable to control. And while everyone else tried to usher Marina forward, to ease her through the transition, to salvage what was left of her entrance, something else was unfolding inside the building. A decision none of them were prepared for. A decision that would force Marina into a confrontation she could neither out-talk nor outmaneuver. Because the director wasn't the only one who changed the program. Someone else had made a move. Someone with influence. Someone who had received a tip moments before Marina stepped out of her SUV. And now? Now Marina was walking straight into the fallout. But what she would find inside the auditorium was far more shocking than anything she had faced on the red carpet. And when the doors closed behind her, everything changed. What came next would alter the entire course of the night, and not one person saw it coming. The doors of the Silverlight Honors Gala are designed to impress. Polished glass framed by brushed brass, illuminated by soft amber lighting that gives every guest a subtle glow as they pass through. But as Marina Hale stepped inside, the glow didn't soften her expression. If anything, it sharpened it. The moment the doors closed behind her, the noise from outside vanished. No boos, no murmurs, no scattered shouts from the barricades. Just the controlled hum of an event running on strict timing, or trying to. Ushers whispered directions, stagehands hurried across darkened wings, and organizers whispered into headsets with the clipped intensity of people trying to keep something from collapsing. Marina paused at the entrance foyer. A slow inhale. A recalibration. One of those breaths people take when they're trying to reset, trying to center, trying to regain the upper hand. But the minute she lifted her chin again, she noticed something that made her stomach pull tight. People were watching her. Not fans, not photographers, people who mattered. Producers, directors, executives, writers, the heartbeat of the Silverlight industry. And the way they watched her wasn't admiration. It was assessment. Careful, quiet, calculated. Have you ever walked into a room expecting to be celebrated, only to find the air thick with unspoken judgment? That slow wave of awareness that you misread the temperature, that the applause you expected has been replaced by something colder? That was the atmosphere Marina walked into. Her entourage felt it too. Their steps slowed. Their smiles tightened. Even her publicist, normally unshakable, seemed suddenly unsure of where to place himself. But before Marina could process the shift, the stage manager appeared again, materializing from a side hallway like she had been waiting for this moment. "Follow me," she said, not unkindly, but firmly. The kind of firmness that says, there is no alternative route. Marina nodded, and the group began moving past the foyer, down a short velvet-lined corridor that led directly to the main auditorium. The sounds of the gala became clearer, orchestral warm-ups, chatter, the faint laughter of guests taking their seats. Then Marina noticed something else. The ushers were avoiding eye contact. Not in a rude way, in a careful way. The way people do when they know something you don't, and they don't want you to see it on their faces. Her steps slowed. "What's going on?" she asked. The stage manager didn't answer. Her job was to deliver Marina to her seat. Nothing more. Nothing less. The corridor opened into the vast Silverlight auditorium, a sweeping space with gold-accented balconies, rich crimson seating, and an atmosphere that always felt like the inside of an award-winning score. But tonight, something about the atmosphere felt off. Electric. Expectant. Uneasy. The front rows were filled with the industry's most powerful figures, fictional directors, producers, actors, studio presidents. Normally they'd be talking, greeting, smiling. But as Marina entered, conversations dimmed. Heads turned. Eyes tracked her. Not hostilely, but curiously. Like everyone was mentally stitching together the pieces of a story they had only glimpsed from afar. Her seat was in the second row, positioned with clear intent, visible to the cameras, framed perfectly in wide shots. But just as Marina stepped toward it, The stage manager touched her elbow. Not yet, she whispered. Marina froze. What do you mean, not yet? The director needs to speak with you first. Those words, quiet but heavy, sent a crack through Marina's composure. The director of the Silverlight Honors Gala was a man known for being calm under pressure, but also brutally honest. If he requested a private word minutes before the ceremony, it meant something was wrong. I'll go with you, her publicist said. The stage manager shook her head. Just Marina. A fresh ripple of tension moved through Marina's entourage. They exchanged glances, the uncomfortable kind, the kind filled with silent questions. But Marina didn't fight it. She couldn't afford to. So she handed her clutch to her stylist, straightened her gown, and followed the stage manager toward a side hallway leading backstage. As soon as they turned the corner, the buzz of the auditorium faded, replaced by the frantic, purposeful motion of backstage workers. Lighting techs adjusted fixtures. Sound engineers tested cues. Presenters rehearsed lines. The hum of production filled the narrow corridor. Then the stage manager stopped in front of a side door. He's inside, she said softly. Marina nodded, placed her hand on the doorknob, and pushed it open. The room wasn't large. A simple backstage conference space with a long table, a few chairs, and a monitor showing the live feed from the auditorium. The director stood near the monitor, arms crossed, headset tilted around his neck. When he turned to face her, his expression wasn't angry. It was conflicted. Marina, he said quietly. Thank you for coming. What's going on? Marina asked. He gestured to a chair. You'll want to sit. She didn't. She stayed standing. The director took a slow breath. The kind of breath that signals someone is about to deliver news they wish they didn't have to. There's been a development, he said, and it affects your opening segment. My segment was removed, Marina said sharply. Reordered, the director corrected. But yes, someone else will be opening the night. Why? The director hesitated, then flicked his eyes to the monitor. The camera feed was sweeping across the audience, landing on a specific figure in the front row. A woman, a rising star in the industry, a newcomer whose popularity had skyrocketed in the past year, and someone Marina had publicly criticized in a recent interview. Aurora Lane, Marina whispered. The director nodded. She was scheduled to present later, but the board requested she open instead. Requested, not suggested. Requested. Marina felt a slow, cold pressure form behind her ribs. On what grounds? The director lowered his voice. Aurora received a message before she arrived. Something about your entrance. Marina's breath caught. My entrance. She was told it might overshadow the ceremony. He paused, and that the board wanted to begin with someone who would set a calm tone. Calm, meaning not Marina, meaning not someone who had been booed publicly, meaning not someone whose arrival was already trending under a hashtag she had no control over. Marina stepped closer. Who sent that message? We don't know, the director said. It didn't come from our team, which meant it came from someone with influence, someone with connections, someone who wanted Aurora at the forefront, and Marina pushed to the side. And there's more, the director added. Marina's pulse quickened. What more? The director turned up the volume on the monitor just as the announcer's voice filled the room. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Tonight's Silverlight Honors Gala will begin shortly. Our opening presenter will address an important shift happening in the film community this year. Important shift. Those were the exact words Marina had written into her own speech. Her exact phrasing. Her exact message. Co-opted. Reassigned. Given to someone else. Marina's throat tightened. They stole my segment. The director didn't deny it. He didn't dare. Instead, he looked at her. Not with pity, not with blame, but with the heavy awareness that the night had already escaped both of their control. And then he said the words that turned the tension into a ticking bomb. Marina, someone leaked footage from the red carpet to the board. Her breath stopped. Leaked what? The director met her eyes. The moment you were booed. The world around Marina seemed to tilt. That moment, that humiliating, destabilizing moment, had reached the board before she even stepped inside the building. And now? Now it was being used to justify her removal from the opening spotlight. Her entrance wasn't just bad. It was damaging. Enough to change her position. Enough to reshape the entire night. Enough to give someone else the platform Marina had spent months preparing for. Her chest tightened again. Her palms grew cold. but she forced herself to stay still, to keep her voice steady. "Who leaked it?" she whispered. The director shook his head. "We don't know. But someone did. Someone had acted fast. Someone with motive. Someone who had everything to gain from Marina's downfall." And Marina knew, right then, right there, that the night was no longer just about managing a bad entrance. It was about finding out who had turned the Silverlight Honors Gala against her. And why? Because this wasn't coincidence. This was targeted. And if Marina didn't figure out who was orchestrating it, the night was only going to get worse. Much worse. Something was waiting for her out there in the auditorium. Something the director hadn't said. Something that would shake her even deeper than the booze. And when she stepped back onto that stage, she would face it head-on. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare her for what she was about to see. What came next changed everything. The director's office suddenly felt too small, too airless, too charged with the kind of pressure that makes every breath feel like it might crack. Marina Hale stood still, but inside her mind, everything was moving. Fast, sharp, chaotic. The leaked footage. The booze. The reshuffled program. Aurora Lane stepping into a spotlight Marina believed belonged to her. The whispers. The stares. The judgment. It wasn't just one problem anymore. It was a pattern. A pattern that meant someone wasn't just reacting to Marina. Someone was targeting her. The director lowered his voice even further. "Marina, this is only the beginning. The board is on edge. The press is circling. And right now, we need to manage the situation before it spirals." But Marina wasn't listening to the caution. Not yet. She was hearing something else underneath his words, something colder. "Show me the footage," she said. The director hesitated. "I'm not sure that's necessary at this moment." "Show me." Her tone left no room for negotiation. The director tapped the monitor, pulled up a secure link, and clicked play. The video was only 12 seconds long. 12 seconds that changed everything. It began with Marina's SUV door opening, then the first flash of cameras, then her first step onto the carpet, confident, poised, ready, and then the booze. Loud, immediate, sharp enough to make even the recording microphone distort. But that wasn't what shocked Marina. What shocked her was the angle. The footage wasn't shot from the livestream cameras. It wasn't from the press line. It wasn't from a bystander behind the barricades. It was filmed from inside the restricted media zone, a vantage point only accessible to Silverlight-approved photographers and partners. Someone with clearance had filmed her and sent it directly to the board. Someone with access. Someone trusted. Someone who wanted that moment weaponized. Her throat tightened. "Who took this?" "We're investigating," the director said. But Marina barely heard him. Her thoughts were already racing through the possible names. Enemies. Rivals. Opportunists. Anyone who would use that moment to humiliate her professionally. And then, another thought hit her. A darker one. What if it wasn't someone outside her circle? What if the leak came from someone on her own team? Her chest tightened at the possibility. But she pushed it down. Later. She would deal with that later. Right now, she needed to keep control of the present moment. She turned away from the monitor. "I want to take my seat." The director nodded, relieved she wasn't demanding a dramatic intervention or challenging the change in the lineup. "Of course. The ushers will escort you." Marina headed for the door, but the director called after her one last time. "Marina, be prepared. When Aurora takes the stage, the audience is going to compare your entrance to hers." She froze. The words landed like stone. Comparison. The very thing Marina couldn't afford tonight. She didn't look back. She simply said, "They always compare. Tonight won't be any different." But it would be, in ways she did not yet understand. In ways that would reshape the entire arc of the night. Marina stepped out of the room and returned to the backstage corridor. Her entourage waited anxiously, their faces tense with the kind of worry no amount of public relations training could hide. Her stylist spoke first. "What happened? What did he say?" Marina shook her head. Later, her publicist stepped close. "We need a strategy. We need to." Later, she said again, sharper this time. The stage manager gestured toward the entrance that led back to the auditorium. "We're ready when you are." Marina inhaled slowly, gathering what was left of her composure, and followed the stage manager down the narrow side hallway. As they approached the auditorium, the sound of the orchestra tuning swelled. The room felt enormous again, filled with warm lights and polished anticipation. Audience members shifted in their seats. Presenters adjusted their notes. Camera operators steadied their rigs. And then Marina noticed something. Something subtle. Something unsettling. A hush was spreading across the room. A quiet ripple of awareness moved through the rows as people realized Marina was re-entering the space. Eyes tracked her again. But this time, the look was different. No longer mere curiosity. No longer passive assessment. There was something new there. Something edged. Something like anticipation mixed with tension. Almost like they were waiting for something to happen. Marina couldn't tell if it was sympathy, judgment, or morbid fascination. But she knew every pair of eyes carried weight. Her seat waited for her in the second row, perfectly positioned for the camera. As she slipped into it, the fabric felt colder than she expected. She folded her hands, steadied her breathing, and lifted her chin, projecting poise even if she didn't feel it. Her publicist took the seat beside her, pretending to flip through the program while whispering, "Everything's fine. Just take it one step at a time." But before Marina could reply, the house lights dimmed. The orchestra softened to a simmering hum. A spotlight snapped onto the stage, and Aurora Lane stepped out from behind the curtain. The audience broke into immediate applause. Warm, enthusiastic, effortless. The applause Marina had expected for herself. Aurora looked radiant, composed, untouched by the chaos that had tangled Marina's entire evening. And when she reached the microphone, she smiled, bright but controlled, like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Thank you," Aurora began. "It's an honor to open the Silverlight Honors Gala this year. Tonight, we celebrate a shift happening in our industry." Marina froze. That phrase, those exact words, her words, the one she crafted for her own opening speech. The words Aurora was now delivering with perfect confidence, before millions of viewers, before the entire Silverlight industry, before Marina herself. Her heartbeat thudded. Her jaw clenched. Her fingers curled slowly into fists on her lap. Aurora continued, seamlessly moving into a message about growth, community, and creativity. A message Marina recognized line by line, because it was hers. Her speech, her introduction, her comeback moment, and it now belonged to someone else. A quiet, sinking realization hit Marina in the chest like an anchor dropping into dark water. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't improvisation. Someone had given Aurora her script. Someone had taken Marina's moment and delivered it into another woman's hands. And whoever did it was just getting started. Because Marina Hale hadn't even reached the worst part of the night yet. Not by a long shot. What came next would hit harder than the booze, deeper than the leaked footage, and sharper than Aurora's repurposed speech. And when it happened, Marina would finally see the truth. Not just about what was unfolding, but about who was behind it. And why. Something big was about to break. And Marina had no idea she was standing directly in its path. What came next would change everything, again. The director's office suddenly felt too small, too airless, too charged with the kind of pressure that makes every breath feel like it might crack. Marina Hale stood still, but inside her mind everything was moving. Fast, sharp, chaotic. The leaked footage, the booze, the reshuffled program. Aurora Lane stepping into a spotlight Marina believed belonged to her. The whispers, the stares, the judgment. It wasn't just one problem anymore. It was a pattern. A pattern that meant someone wasn't just reacting to Marina. Someone was targeting her. The director lowered his voice even further. "Marina, this is only the beginning. The board is on edge. The press is circling. And right now, we need to manage the situation before it spirals." But Marina wasn't listening to the caution. Not yet. She was hearing something else underneath his words, something colder. "Show me the footage," she said. The director hesitated. "I'm not sure that's necessary at this moment." "Show me." Her tone left no room for negotiation. The director tapped the monitor, pulled up a secure link, and clicked play. The video was only 12 seconds long. 12 seconds that changed everything. It began with Marina's SUV door opening. Then the first flash of cameras. Then her first step onto the carpet. Confident, poised, ready. And then the booze. Loud, immediate, sharp enough to make even the recording microphone distort. But that wasn't what shocked Marina. What shocked her was the angle. The footage wasn't shot from the livestream cameras. It wasn't from the press line. It wasn't from a bystander behind the barricades. It was filmed from inside the restricted media zone, a vantage point only accessible to Silverlight-approved photographers and partners. Someone with clearance had filmed her and sent it directly to the board. Someone with access. Someone trusted. Someone who wanted that moment weaponized. Her throat tightened. Who took this? We're investigating, the director said. But Marina barely heard him. Her thoughts were already racing through the possible names. Enemies. Rivals. Opportunists. Anyone who would use that moment to humiliate her professionally. And then, another thought hit her. A darker one. What if it wasn't someone outside her circle? What if the leak came from someone on her own team? Her chest tightened at the possibility. But she pushed it down. Later. She would deal with that later. Right now, she needed to keep control of the present moment. She turned away from the monitor. I want to take my seat. The director nodded, relieved she wasn't demanding a dramatic intervention or challenging the change in the lineup. Of course, the ushers will escort you. Marina headed for the door, but the director called after her one last time. Marina, be prepared. When Aurora takes the stage, the audience is going to compare your entrance to hers. She froze. The words landed like stone. Comparison. The very thing Marina couldn't afford tonight. She didn't look back. She simply said, they always compare. Tonight won't be any different. But it would be. In ways she did not yet understand. In ways that would reshape the entire arc of the night. Marina stepped out of the room and returned to the backstage corridor. Her entourage waited anxiously, their faces tense with the kind of worry no amount of public relations training could hide. Her stylist spoke first. What happened? What did he say? Marina shook her head. Later. Her publicist stepped close. We need a strategy. We need to. Later, she said again, sharper this time. The stage manager gestured toward the entrance that led back to the auditorium. We're ready when you are. Marina inhaled slowly, gathering what was left of her composure, and followed the stage manager down the narrow side hallway. As they approached the auditorium, the sound of the orchestra tuning swelled. The room felt enormous again, filled with warm lights and polished anticipation. Audience members shifted in their seats. Presenters adjusted their notes. Camera operators steadied their rigs. And then Marina noticed something. Something subtle. Something unsettling. A hush was spreading across the room. A quiet ripple of awareness moved through the rows as people realized Marina was re-entering the space. Eyes tracked her again. But this time, the look was different. No longer mere curiosity. No longer passive assessment. There was something new there. Something edged. Something like anticipation mixed with tension. Almost like they were waiting for something to happen. Marina couldn't tell if it was sympathy, judgment, or morbid fascination. But she knew every pair of eyes carried weight. Her seat waited for her in the second row, perfectly positioned for the camera. As she slipped into it, the fabric felt colder than she expected. She folded her hands, steadied her breathing, and lifted her chin, projecting poise even if she didn't feel it. Her publicist took the seat beside her, pretending to flip through the program while whispering, "Everything's fine. Just take it one step at a time." But before Marina could reply, the house lights dimmed. The orchestra softened to a simmering hum. A spotlight snapped onto the stage. And Aurora Lane stepped out from behind the curtain. The audience broke into immediate applause. Warm, enthusiastic, effortless. The applause Marina had expected for herself. Aurora looked radiant, composed, untouched by the chaos that had tangled Marina's entire evening. And when she reached the microphone, she smiled, bright but controlled, like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Thank you," Aurora began. "It's an honor to open the Silverlight Honors Gala this year. Tonight, we celebrate a shift happening in our industry." Marina froze. That phrase, those exact words, her words, the one she crafted for her own opening speech. The words Aurora was now delivering with perfect confidence, before millions of viewers, before the entire Silverlight industry, before Marina herself. Her heartbeat thudded. Her jaw clenched. Her fingers curled slowly into fists on her lap. Aurora continued, seamlessly moving into a message about growth, community, and creativity. A message Marina recognized line by line, because it was hers. Her speech, her introduction, her comeback moment, and it now belonged to someone else. A quiet, sinking realization hit Marina in the chest like an anchor dropping into dark water. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't improvisation. Someone had given Aurora her script. Someone had taken Marina's moment and delivered it into another woman's hands. And whoever did it was just getting started. Because Marina Hale hadn't even reached the worst part of the night yet. Not by a long shot. What came next would hit harder than the booze, deeper than the leaked footage, and sharper than Aurora's repurposed speech. And when it happened, Marina would finally see the truth. Not just about what was unfolding, but about who was behind it. And why. Something big was about to break. And Marina had no idea she was standing directly in its path. What came next would change everything, again. The applause for Aurora Lane faded into polite chatter as the spotlight dimmed, but the tension in Marina Hale's seat didn't. It lingered like a charged wire, thrumming beneath her skin, vibrating through her chest. Every laugh, every clap, every murmured comment in the auditorium felt sharper, more pointed, like the audience itself was measuring her reaction. Her entourage tried to break her focus. Her publicist leaned in, whispering reminders of strategy and composure. Her stylist lightly touched her arm, suggesting posture, poise. Her assistant handed her a water bottle, but Marina didn't see them. She barely felt them. All of her attention was on the stage, on the words that weren't hers, on the spotlight that should have been hers, and on the subtle, unseen forces that had orchestrated this moment so perfectly against her. She realized something frightening. If the crowd outside had challenged her, this crowd, this curated, elite audience, could destroy her reputation, not by booze, but by comparison, by calm, controlled acknowledgement of her rival, by watching her falter silently while another shone effortlessly. This was far more dangerous, far more permanent, far more calculated. The stage manager, standing a few steps behind her, noticed Marina's subtle shifting in her seat. The tension radiated outward. "Stay calm," the manager whispered. "Don't react. Not yet." Marina's jaw clenched, and for a moment she considered standing up, confronting the audience, confronting Aurora, confronting the board. Any of it. Her instincts screamed for action. She had always believed that moments like this could be claimed, seized, dominated. That power was about presence, control, and confidence. Tonight, she felt powerless. She focused instead on her breathing. In, out, counting silently in her head. 1, 2, 3. She felt the panic trying to rise and forced it down. She had to keep composure. She had to survive the moment. She had to assess, not react. But survival was proving difficult. The footage leaked to the board, the stolen speech, Aurora's flawless execution. It all painted a picture she couldn't deny. Someone had orchestrated this behind her back. Someone had timed it to coincide with her booed red carpet. Someone had weaponized her embarrassment and used it to elevate another. And Marina knew that if she didn't act strategically, she could lose more than her spotlight. She could lose influence, credibility, and the narrative of her reinvention, the very image she had worked for months to rebuild. She scanned the room discreetly. Who might have been responsible? A board member? A rival producer? A jealous assistant? Perhaps even someone on her own team? Her pulse quickened as theories cascaded through her mind. Every face seemed a potential enemy. Every gesture could be a signal. Every whisper might be a coded instruction. She felt trapped in a maze she couldn't see the exit from. Marina's thoughts were interrupted by a subtle motion from the stage manager. She tilted her head slightly toward the side.